Are we hot?
It's going, yeah.
Good. All right, call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. That's a different.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Smoke. Public input. Anything from the group? It did. Any delegations? And approval of our minutes from the November meeting. Thank you, Terry.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
November financials.
So,
This is cemetery.
cemetery revenues up, 12,000 from last year at the same time. That hasn't been moving a whole lot. Expenses are down a little bit. It's mainly because of the main project, or the mapping project. The mapping project that we did not do, it's in the progress, but it's not going to be get done till end of next year. So that's where a big part of that is. Some of these expenses aren't on here yet, but are being incurred. So also. Somebody wants me to stop or slow down this hour. Let's see. Now we're on golf course. Total revenues were right about 530,000, 531. Eric put in $1,000 deposit here today. So there's $1,000 there.
Towards membership. Did you get that down at your
Sale.
sale?
Yep.
Nice.
So between that, the only other incoming will be the monthly from the city employees and the fund pass. So there is a little bit coming in yet, but won't be a whole lot. Only other revenue thing would be coming in. It's going to go back out, but we do have a check for the golf carts that are going to the sports complex. So there again, that's already spoken for, but so that you'll see that eventually in there. But
Jason, on these, for example, like the money that Eric took in, $1,000, that goes toward next year, right?
No, it's in December.
it's this year's financials.
Yeah, this year's.
Yeah, but it's for next year's.
Yeah, but it's taken in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's for,
The basis is actual cash, so when it's received, it's by state law.
I mean, because, for example, like the fund passes and that, in the city, and that's all for this year.
Well, the fund pass is ongoing, so it's
that's a
12 months
12-month
a year.
contract, yeah.
So it's not, if you buy a fund pass this year,
January 1 to December 30.
no, it's whenever they start it, to whenever, a year from whenever they start it, so.
So we'll be 1,000 behind to start next year.
But that's pretty, I mean, people
That's
get,
common.
Yeah.
people get gift certificates for Christmas for the next year's memberships, and that just goes into this year's financials and doesn't show up on next year's 2022 financial.
I'm sure we had the same thing in 20,
Mm-hmm.
the end of 20, carrying into 21.
Not being an accountant or anything, I mean, it's probably just me, but that doesn't seem like the proper way of doing things. There's just something out there, you're putting money in for next year's membership, but it gets spent this year.
Well, as far as the fund pass is concerned, they're essentially just paying for it over a year's time. So if they start in June 1st, they end May 31st. So technically, they are paying for it over a year's time. So if they continue on and they have it multiple years in a row, they've got 12 months in this year and 12 months in the next year, and then if they ever decide to cancel, then that's where it would be a little, but I guess having that monthly income coming in, as far as I'm concerned, is a good thing, because you can kind of count on it for a year's time. So,
Since you mentioned golf carts, any news on them?
nope, I haven't heard a word. So,
Yeah, sure.
well, hopefully we get them before the first of the year, since they already sold 5 to the sports complex, so.
Don't sell the rest.
Yeah.
Have they come and got them?
Nope.
Then-
No, I'm not letting them take them until they come. So if you look at the golf course side on the revenue side, kind of, we talked about this before. The only thing that we haven't hit revenue on is punch cards and the miscellaneous fees, which are typically gas and a few other things that go into that category. But punch cards is the only thing, and strictly the reason for that is our memberships are way up.
Memberships.
So I can handle that one side being low. So otherwise, memberships up 20, 21, almost 22, 4,000 range. I mean, it's go down the board and everything's up. So
531. That's a pretty good number.
yep. That's even, me and Eric kind of sat on the amount of memberships and our dollar amount last year, and we kind of said that some numbers, and we've surpassed both those numbers, so.
So hopefully it'll continue
Yep,
Right.
throughout years to come.
The new memberships that you had, which you have 71 or 70-something memberships,
Yep.
were those, did you ever find, are those guys coming from other, like Wild Gold or?
Yeah, some that have never golfed before, some that came from area core, smaller towns, or from Wild Oak over here. Some were a part of the city employees. I mean, we had probably 12 to 15 new city employees that did the city employee payroll deduct this year. So, I mean, that picked up some new members everywhere. It felt like everybody was out at the golf course, so I don't know where they all came from, but everybody was just playing golf.
I attribute to that, you just got a nicer golf course than other areas around and want to come and golf.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions on revenues? As far as expenses, we'll go over bills. Bills is after this, so typically we did the other way around, but that's okay. About the only thing that I've got, there are quite a few that are over budget. The main things are repair and maintenance, and that was because we took reels in to get sharpened. Other than that, the Golf Pro contract will end up being over, but because there's one more payment in that. Otherwise, nothing's too out of whack. Utilities are up by quite a bit, but being as dry as we were, that's where a lot of that came from. So that pumped a lot of water this year. Otherwise, there's 5,000 left in supplies and materials, but that is not totally up to date, and I got a few things to spend yet. So otherwise.
The other thing to note is there's actually bills that are paid in January that are December expenses that end up getting credited back to this year's budget as well. So you have 2 months left of bills to come out of it, at least 3 pay cycles.
Then, as of right now, we're 167,000 to the good, but there's things that have to come out of that yet and whatnot, so.
With the stuff that's coming out in that time period, what do you anticipate us having left over?
Should be, if golf carts come out of this, well, golf carts won't be until after the first of the year, but if we take golf carts out of that, that's about 100,000. There's money that needs to go into the project for next year. If both those things happen, then it'll probably be around that 15 to 20.
Yeah.
With that money, those two things taken out of it, so. But there again, that money going towards the project is just coming out of our cash, so.
Did that include that 35,000 we had from the year before?
I believe that got built in, correct me if I'm wrong, that's basically got shifted over to next year.
All of the funds, so for example, if you actually end this year $50,000 ahead, it stays in the golf fund.
Right.
I can tell you we're anticipating only the additional revenue received this year in that fund above what was budgeted, because we stopped transferring the health insurance over, and then there's $52,000 coming out of this for next year's budget. So you'll probably have 50, well, I'm not counting the golf carts because the council had that as a interfund loan contingency. So you'll have anywhere from 50 to 100,000 in cash in that account after the amount that's committed for next year's budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I just knew we had 35,000 from 2 years ago that didn't, on the,
There was 52,000 for this current budget cycle, and we used some of that money for design work and the
Gotcha.
master plan, and the remainder of that was that 35,000.
gotcha. Okay,
Okay.
bills?
And I apologize for the formatting, that's all my fault. I switched you over to our standard format for the city, because this is now a statutory board that's authorized by code. You can only take action what's actually listed, so I just changed it to match that updated format. So if they're out of order too, that's not my fault. It's my fault, not his, I mean.
That's not a big deal.
We
We can wing it.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
As far as bills, I went through that here right before we, this afternoon. There was, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. There's a utility bill, and then I have the two separate council meetings, so we'll go through both. Somebody sees something they want to question, just speak up. The 225 from Kimball Midwest, there's part of it taken out of both sides of Gulf Bend Cemetery. We restocked our bolt bin, so that's what that was. From Zimco Supply, the 1,200, the 1,195 was chemicals and seed.
Do you have a rough idea how that's gonna end up for the year?
For this year,
Fertilizer and.
are you talking what my budget balance will be?
Yeah,
Won't be much left.
pretty much all of it.
Yep.
I mean, were we close as far as what we had budgeted?
Right now, the golf course has about $400, and the cemetery has about $1,600. I was looking at getting some pen mulch for overseeding and hydro seeding yet this year. I haven't made that commitment yet. So essentially, between the two, there's about $2,000 right
Did
now.
you get everything that you expected? And I'm talking for 2021 now. Or did we have to
it-
out anything because of budget?
Not, well, kind of, not really. The main, I kind of got saved because we were down a staff member, so weren't able to spray as much when I wanted to. So essentially, we did all right because we didn't have the ability to spray it anyway, so. The budget did go up about $3,000 for next season, so.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yep. And I do have some product left over, so with what I got left over and everything, I think we'll be sitting pretty good for next year, so. Okay, if nobody has any questions on that one, I will go back and the other one. There again, electric bills, like I said, nothing too out of the ordinary, just somebody has a question, we'll talk about it. You need me to back up or anything, just holler.
Do we have to do two motions on this?
Just usually one.
November and December?
Usually they're together, so. But
I don't know.
Usually we just do one to cover them both.
I'll make a motion to approve those this year.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thanks, Mark. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Go. Superintendent report.
For the cemetery, 17 burials in November. We've been packing graves, flagging the trails and the roads for moving snow through the winter, something we do every year. Equipment maintenance, snow removal, equipment's all ready to go. We got a chance to use it. Been evaluating policies on the procedures in the community gardens. I've got a friend that's up in Brookings at the Park and Rec up there, and he was gracious enough to send me what they have. So that was kind of interesting to see the differences. Been keeping eyes open for the two mower. We had 2 used mowers approved for the cemetery. Looking at either that or one 60-inch ZTR mower. Should be able to do one or the other. Just need to see if we can actually find 2 used mowers that we were looking for. For the golf course, we hauled water for about 3 days here a couple weeks ago. Greens were gone over a month without any water or moisture, so to be safe, we hauled water to them. Got water to everything once, most of the old 9 twice, and a couple greens they actually had 3 loads on. Getting ready to coordinate tree work on the golf course and around the pond area. There's 2 different tree companies that will be working on them, so I'm really hoping that they're not there at the same time. If they are, we'll work around it. You'll be in contact with Dakota Pump to work on the pump work that needs to be done. Hopefully we get that done fairly soon in case if there's any problems and issues with getting parts. Talking with fertilizer companies, everything's going up. Fertilizer more than the chemical. Chemical's going up some. Fertilizer is just, I keep on getting notices of increases, so I don't think it ain't going to go back down. So we'll just have to figure it out. So. Parts, big question, don't know. doing some shop maintenance stuff, organizing and doing inventory, stuff like that. For supplies and parts and stuff going forward, it's going to be interesting to, so going to try to plan out as far ahead as possible. We had a windshield breakout of one of the snow moving equipment this week, so we're probably 10 days out from that. Got to get that from Canada. We had an electrical problem on another one. It's just typical stuff. Working on a schedule for maintenance and coordinating with Eric for tournaments to make sure we can fit projects and routine maintenance around. We'll be going over that here shortly. MTI brought a class out to the clubhouse, and for a class project, they measured it out, and they're going to do kind of some mock-up plans. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what they come up with. They measured out the whole clubhouse, and
I think I saw in one of their sheets that their like focus for the project was like, so I think MTI built the clubhouse for
yes,
in now, and their focus was like entrance from the parking lot to the clubhouse, and then like storage space and flowability or something like that that I saw in some of their class worksheets. So be interesting when
It's just a proposal?
it's
not even necessarily a proposal. It's just a class project. Not that we're looking at, but it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with and everything. So.
Yep.
And so just an interesting tidbit. So I don't know. Otherwise, just kind of just general maintenance and trying to get things ready to go for next year. And any questions on any of that? We'll go over a tournament schedule and the projects here just in a little bit. So.
Jason, this is kind of out of the blue, but you mentioned something about the ponds. Is there anything that could be done with those ponds?
Yeah, that just costs money.
Chemical?
Other than chemical, you can either put a fountain in or that kind of stuff. There are some biological stuff that you can do to treat them, but in the long run, to kind of zap them, and you got to remember where the water is coming from.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot I can do. There is, I know I was questioned on the water level a couple times this year. Knowing my utility bill was getting up there and chemical budget wasn't quite there, so that this year more than others, yeah, I probably skimped a little bit on some of that stuff, but yeah, short of doing some aeration or stuff like that, yeah, it's.
Short of, there's no magical way of doing it.
No, it's gonna cost money either way. I mean, doesn't matter how you do it. So. Like I said, there's some more biologically friendly things than just strictly chemical. There's a company out in Minnesota that called Bioverse. They do more of the microbiology type stuff, and it's supposed to be a little more friendly. They'll usually nuke it first with chemical to kind of get it under control, and then they throw these spheres in with different things in it to help control the microorganisms and stuff like that. So. But a little easier to do the ponds than the lake. I mean, you're dealing with a lot less surface area and everything, so, but it's still expensive.
When the zebra mussels get in there, it'll be fine.
Well, then you won't be getting any golf balls out of it.
Probably true. But your water will be gin clear,
Oh, sure, yeah,
if you know what gin is.
I used to.
Jason, tell me, on the, when you say you're coordinating tree work, tell me what you're doing there, what is that?
So part of the parks part of it, they included the pond area to clean up the understory of the pond area
Which pond are you talking?
on 11.
Okay.
So there's one company hired, they'll do some over at the campground, some across the road on the west side of the Indian Village and on the south side of the Indian Village by the parking. So there's one company hired to do those areas, and then we're hiring another one to do the golf course side. And we'll, that,
So you're talking Dagan on the other,
yes,
Okay.
they're going to be doing the golf course part of it,
okay.
as long as you approve
But
it.
then you're saying the pond off 11, they're gonna go in there, they're gonna remove some of the trees around it?
None of the big trees, we're going to work more on the understory part of it, cleaning up that.
Okay.
If there are damaged, dead trees, they will
Sure.
take some of that out also, but,
Okay.
um,
And that's,
but they're going to try to maintain the canopy so that it just doesn't turn into, and it's going to be an ongoing
sure,
issue because once you clear that out, you have
absolutely.
more is going to come. So
So is it more on the north side of the pond, or is
they're
it?
going to work all the way around.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
So, like you said, I'm really hoping that they're not there at the exact same days so that I'm going back and forth dealing with. Around the pond will be a little easier to say this is what we want and everything, whereas the golf course side, I need to kind of communicate a little more on that, so.
So just tell me, who's doing it? So are you kind of watching it, or is the city over watching that?
I will be. On these two areas, on the pond and the golf course.
Okay.
Steve Roth from Parks will be dealing with the parts across the road and the
Okay.
campground.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
Okay.
the pond part was lumped in with those other areas, but I'm still going to be kind of coordinating it. So, I mean, kind of going with what their plan was, but since it's affecting,
You see the start, which is,
yeah,
in my book, that's awesome.
yeah. So, but there again, you get down in there and gets pretty green at times, so there's going to make it more eye appealing, something's going to have to be done to that also. So,
Good. Eric?
Not much, other than rounds played. Kind of went over that at the November meeting because we closed up November 8th officially. Both last 2 years we closed up on November 8th. We had more rounds last November than we did this November. That's supposed to be on the report November, not September through October, but up about 4,000 rounds from last year. All the membership numbers from previous years on down to Fund Pass holders. Hopefully we continue to get Fund Pass holders. And I know a lot of, people appreciate us staying open into November where Jason and his staff are still mulching up leaves. And then, 9-hole courses, they close October 15th, and other 18-hole courses might close up October 31st, where we're still open unless you want to go to Sioux Falls. So a lot of people appreciate that, us staying open into November, even though there were some days here in November and December when it was 50 degrees. But overall, obviously a good year. In that November, we took in $1,400 in green fees. Staying open, still brought in some revenue. And then we'll talk here shortly with the tournament schedule. I attached when I sent out the tournament schedule for next year. It's all tentative. There's a lot of scribbles on it. Usually everything is confirmed and done by usually end of February, first part of March. But I've already had some schedule changes and other tournaments contact me wanting to host their tournament at Lakeview, and there's only so many days and so many weekends available to host a fundraiser or something. So any questions before we move on to away from the clubhouse report? The clubhouse is cleaned out. I got one more weekend of my Christmas sale on my merchandise and selling gift certificates for the golf course this coming Saturday. It's been so down there.
What is your time on Saturday again?
11 to 4, I'm down there on 4th and Main. Then eventually here I'll get in. The clubhouse is completely bare. Jason's been doing inventory and stuff, and then I'll clean it all out and go from there when we get another few months till spring and over a ways away. So that's all I got for the clubhouse report. Not much action out there.
Okay. Very good. Tree removal contract.
There's not a whole lot to this. It's pretty simple. We went out and toured it with both companies that put in a submittal on it. Basically, and if we decide we want to go beyond this, we're more than capable of doing that because of the dollar amount we have available for the yearly project. This is just to kind of get us start on it, and we can decide as we go if we want to go further. I had them do 50 current trees that are dead, dying, or we just want them out of there. I've had a few requests by a few people taking certain ones out. So also grinding those 50 stumps, plus we had about 10 or 15 from last year that we still hadn't gotten done. So my plan is to have these guys do all the stumping. In this, we'll be doing the taking the material off-site. So they're going to knock the tree down, and they're going to not cut it up into manageable pieces, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, they're doing a lot of it, but we'll have a little work into it too. The city streets department will be hauling it off-site. So we'll be coordinating with them also.
They can all,
you're responsible for cutting up the trees?
They're going to cut them up into manageable pieces that we can.
You don't have to do that.
They're going to. I mean, we might have to do a little bit, but with our payloader that we got with the grapple, it's pretty easy. I mean, I can take 10, 15-foot chunks as long as I can maneuver around other trees. We can move a lot in a big hurry. So it's going to be more down the road, all the little piddly stuff that might be there till spring. But if we get a vast majority of it, it'll go well. So.
Do you have any plans to replace trees?
Not at this particular time, but it'll be evaluated as we start taking more out next year. We'll look at adding a few. So I'm not planning on adding 50 back. Periodically, if we end up taking out 4 here in this particular area, and maybe if this one tree, if we move it back another 20, 30 feet, and that would be a good spot for one, I would consider that. So it's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
is stuff going to be hauled out as it's,
Ideally, but I don't know if they're going to be able to haul it out, especially if we're doing both sides of both at the
Right.
same time. So it's going to be more crucial to get the stuff around that pond hauled out as we go. We got 3 staging sites for that. Across the road into that little gravel parking lot, to the left of 11 Green, and then to the between the water and 11T, so kind of back in there in that tall grass. There's an access to get in there, and there's a gate to get in by 11 Green. So, there again, we may have them do some aerial work too, bring in a boom truck to. We have a bunch of hangers and stuff, so see how this all goes, and if the ground's froze and Mother Nature cooperates, and Mother Nature might not cooperate, and we might not be able to get it might make all this really difficult, so. Just going to be, let's see what happens type of thing. So,
So the approval of this will be just for the rates, the,
essentially, yes.
yeah.
Yep, yep, and I think this is very reasonable dollar amount, so.
Yeah.
And you, as a board, just need the contract approval. He doesn't have the ability to do that. It has to be the cemetery golf course.
Yeah, we've done those in the past. too.
So now, this contract doesn't deal with that pond on 11?
Nope, that was lumped in with the parks.
Okay. Now, my question then goes back to this one. We're doing the cleanup basically behind these guys
Yeah,
on that portion that is on 11, for example.
yep,
Is the city involved in all the cleanup of it?
yeah. So on that part of it, it's going to be pretty simple though, because they're going to bring it up out of that pond area and put it in piles. And,
They're not going to put it in piles on the golf course.
well, possibly to the left side in that big loop area. So we'd have a little,
By the tee box? That's the same?
no, by 11 green, sorry.
Green.
Left of the green, in that,
After the green.
yeah, where that big kind of open area is.
That's where you're looking at the green, which way.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking.
North of the green.
Yep, north of the green,
Very good.
Thank you.
north of the green, and then also that big grassy area to the west of the pond.
Yeah,
There's an area in there that we could pile to also. And then with the city, if they come in either with our payloader or their payloader, they got barrel grapples, so it's going to be fairly easy cleanup from there. So, but as far as the stuff on the golf course, I'm more comfortable with us taking the equipment out there and doing that cleanup anyways, so.
well, that's, that basically, my question was, I mean, we don't want Michigan loaders running all the way up and down
No.
that fairway.
Nope, not going to happen. Unless if I'm directly coordinating it. I mean, if we take our payloader down when the ground's froze and when we feel that we're capable of doing it. But I'm controlling that and not some contractor going wherever he thinks he ain't going to cause damage. So, okay.
Get a motion to approve the contract. Gary?
Second.
Joe? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Discussion items, tournament schedule and capital projects.
Well, I'll bring up the tentative schedule here. Main reason for bringing this up, we had, I don't know if everybody's been informed of this, but SDGA approached us about hosting the state amateur, men's and women's, which is a very big deal. We pulled Jeff in and Dan in, and we talked to them about it and agreed to it. The biggest issue with it is it's over the same weekend as our member guests. So everybody agreed that we didn't want to pass up on this. It's one of their keystone tournaments, per se, or their showcase tournaments. So there was another option for the senior husband-wife, was it, Eric?
Seniors, seniors.
Yeah, and we kind of mentioned that we would almost rather have that because of the timing of it, because of our member guest, but it was decided that the amateur men's and women's was a better fit, so I'll move to that here right away, and then we'll talk about that real quick since that's more of a discussion item, then we'll go over all of it.
Yeah, and I'll have, once we get into February, I'll have more of a tied down schedule. This is just a preliminary one for starting in the winter. Usually I'm confirming with all reoccurring events right before we get open back up in March or into March, where people are actually thinking golf and stuff. So, I mean, this is a very rough draft, just with a few of the changes and a few modified possible changes. And like Jason brought up there, when the member guests will be moved back there to the 29th, 30th, and 31st, and then the SDGA tournament, that's a 3-day event with 1-day practice round. So then Lynette could help me with possibly moving the Pepsi Cola tournament to the following weekend, so we don't have such a clutter of.
Is the course closed during the practice round?
No, for the SCGA, you mean?
Yeah.
No.
And that was one of our bigger concerns, is it's basically going to be 2 weekends in a
2
row.
weekends in a row of completely closed.
Closed down. So
No.
that was very much a concern of ours, and we discussed that, and
Yeah, they'll probably, on that Thursday, there'll probably be a block of tee times the SCGA wants blocked off for practice rounds,
Is that
but
the same for their tournament too?
what do you mean?
We're gonna close the course for 3 days for their tournament?
The course has to be closed for 3 days. There'll be 150 golfers-ish, 125 to 150. They don't shotgun it like a tournament. They tee time it like you would a
Yeah.
regular stroke play event. So it'll be probably 2 different waves of tee times, I'm assuming. It depends how many people there are, with men's and women's off number 1 and 10. So then they'll be turning to both sides at certain times where play won't be able to be out there. And I'll know more of that once probably Tom Jans will sit down with me and Jason to confirm details on everything. You want to play? In the SCGA event, I'm saying. You can sign up, Joe.
If I can back it up.
so hopefully nobody had any huge objections to that, but we were kind of put on the spot on it, and like I said, we conferred with Jeff and Dan, since Dan is a big part of the member guest tournament, setting that up, so.
The timing wasn't the greatest, obviously, for this. When they talked to me about it, it was, obviously the concern is you're shutting the course down for 2 weekends. And it would have been better if it would have been a year or so down the road when they came, but the opportunity for this doesn't happen very often. Normally you have a year or 2 in advance to schedule this out, but I don't know why they ended up losing a course or what happened.
Yeah,
but
that's probably why. Usually they have their schedule completed in the fall, and he contacted me, what was it, right before Thanksgiving?
Something like that, yeah.
And I'm guessing they had a few courses, either couldn't host it or something, and,
So we got something.
yeah. Sorry, Joe.
So,
There's pluses and negatives to doing this, obviously, and my point is it's a good opportunity to showcase the course statewide.
and then we also have the state AA boys in the first part of October also, so.
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff going on next year.
What's the Work Masters?
That's just, next time, that's just a tea time event. It's a group of guys that come in from Minneapolis, here, from,
No, from here on.
yeah, they're originally all from here on. It's like a class reunion, basically, for them.
Yep. And me and Eric have talked about, I mean, that seems very, very full, but we talked about maybe taking off some of those that are smaller, and so it doesn't look quite as obtrusive.
Because this schedule, I mean, there's a few tea-timed events that don't affect play,
Yeah.
but it's just the big shotgun ones that take up the whole course, and people have to be off the course by a certain point and can't play until a certain point in the day when that tournament's done.
Well, I hate to see you gain 70 members this year.
70 what?
Group, 70 members
I know.
past year, and all of a sudden 140 leave next year because.
We have so many events, and I'm finding out with golf, like it has been the last 2 years on the rise, there's more and more events, fundraisers that are coming up, and they're wanting to host their tournament. Well, we only have 2 courses in town, so if one course tells them no, they're going to go to the other course. well, we can't host every single event and have 700 or 600 members that want to play. Some might only play on the weekends, and we take up every single weekend
Yeah,
for an event. It's going to kind of a double-edged sword on those events are good for publicity, for, I mean, revenue purposes, but also memberships make up, I don't know, a fourth of our revenue that we got to have play too.
What kind of revenue do you pick up on that for this three-day state tournament?
State tournament, it's all based on entry fees from them. The courses that STGA hosts events on get 60% of their entry fees, and it's like 100. They give the course 60% of what they charge of the entry fees. So $4,000, $5,000,
yeah, they
Plus all-
$75 to $100 a person.
110, I think, is what.
110
Yeah,
to-
110 to 125. And plus, you're looking at any time from June, July, and August. All these people playing in this STGA event are going to come pay green fees throughout the course of the summer to get as much playing time on our course as they can get. So all in all, it is revenue coming in, not just from the tournament, but leading up to the event too.
But for your concern, Joe, that's very much, as far as this tournament especially, taken into consideration. We've had two others that have wanted to, and
Yeah, we're kind of,
we're going to tread very lightly on anything additional, so.
yeah.
Most of everything that's on there has been annual event, so, for the most part, so.
Any new events, basically, I mean, me and Jason are going to talk, and I mean, you guys have told us before, it's our decision. If we take the event, we don't. If I email somebody back and say, sorry, that weekend might be open, but we might not be able to take another event just because it's a weekend that needs to be open for public play and member play.
So I'll go back, unless somebody else has questions on that, I will go back to the start, and we'll just kind of scroll down here a little bit. Eric would be better to talk about some of it than myself. So,
Start April, just the two high school events. I mean, April and May, we start out with high school events. We have the two there. One has a question mark if they have that Parks and Girls invite. The other one's boys and girls, Class B Classic from all the small towns. So that's all there is in April. May, there's an invite that's JV invite. That's just 9 holes, 10 a.m. shotgun. Then we have ladies, men's day stuff. That's on the calendar. That's when that stuff all begins in May. Invite for the girls high school team. There on the 15th. Usually in October, we have 36 holes of the Lakeview Wild Oak Ryder Cup. We're thinking about putting 18 holes in the spring and 18 holes in the fall instead of having it all in one day in October when daylight's from 8 a.m. until 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and you're trying to get it all in. So that's just up in the air. There's other, and I mean, Mitchell High, Mitchell Middle School, they want to host more events at Lakeview too. So, I mean, there's the ESD girls invite there for the middle school. There's some region tournaments there for A and B schools. Mitchell Christian fundraiser there. That's a recurring event. Any questions there on May that you guys have before we go to June? I mean, like I always do too, I coordinate as much as I can. I send out emails to get people aware of what's going on or when they can or can't play so that when the tournament shotguns, they know they can't necessarily come out and play. Questions yet?
and just like the fitting day,
Fitting days, they take
stuff
up
like
a-
that, they're on the calendar, but it doesn't take up the golf course. So
Yeah.
just, if you question, I mean, the 12:30 shotgun.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So you got John Paul II, that's a regular one. The Chamber goes between Lakeview and Wild Oak. That's out at Lakeview this year. That's followed right behind the Big Dummies one. And Big Dummies has changed their date quite a bit. VGA, that necessarily shouldn't even be on there. That's 4 to 5 tee times from 10 to 10:30 in the morning, just like regular play. Junior golf will start up in June, our annual Veterans Fundraiser Tournament. The firefighters, they had their tournament 2 years ago. They want to bring it back. I mean, that's just another date there on the 25th. The Lakeview 4-person, so that's June in a nutshell there. Get into July. July, you got adult junior scramble. That's tied with my junior camp. There's the 4th of July. That's Vermilion Open. They've been there forever. Ladies scramble. The South Dakota National Guard. That's tentatively on there. I can keep going. We put 0 events on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th because that's the weekend before the member guests now and the South Dakota Golf Association website, SDGA Championship. I was looking on their website earlier, so I had that in my head. Questions on July?
That's not the final senior tournament, or is it?
No, that's the first one.
That's just your,
Yeah, that's the first one that we have, not the finale. And you get into August, Pepsi Cola that we have every year. That's usually on the first Wednesday, possibly move that to the second Wednesday with the SDGA event. The Emory Open, their fundraiser for their high school sports on the 13th. That's a reoccurring event. Mitchell High School Boys Duel. So then now we start to get into the high school season, end of August. Meadowbrook Masters, they're just 5-6 tee times. It's not. It looks like a lot on the schedule, but it's just tee times. Verification, possibly. Jason and me had talked. The best week would be the 22nd, 23rd, even though there's events coming up. If we let them know that this is the only time we can verify to stay away from other events, we're going to have to. Questions on August? Get into September. More stuff going on about every week, every weekend. High school tournaments, middle school tournaments, family reunion there, the pork producers, National American University, that's not that one. NAU, that's a crop insurance, NAU crop insurance. Boys invite. The Mitchell-Madison Ryder Cup, it was in Madison last year, so it'll be in Mitchell this year. The Mitchell Technical Institute fundraiser. It's all the kind of the same schedule. It just is a lot and seems like a lot looking at the schedule. And then we get into October, and we have the State AA Boys Golf Tournament this year as well on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of October.
So basically, Eric, you really, I mean, it looks to me like the vast majority, and I'm talking 90+%, are tournaments we have every year anyway.
Correct. It's just a matter of new ones that want to call, say, 2 weeks before they want to have an event or something, and just because that weekend's open, that doesn't
But
mean.
if we were to look at this past year's calendar, I mean, this calendar looks like it's full,
Correct.
but it really
It's
is
the
no
same.
different than what it was last year.
Than previous year, maybe a few.
And I'll be honest with you, and Joe, you probably would agree to this, I mean, we played on days that we didn't think we were gonna get a play. I mean, it just worked out. Whether they.
You just have to go off at
They went off at
5:45.
9, or they went
Yeah.
off, you know, whatever the case was, it wasn't like you couldn't go out and play that day.
No, it's just a matter of a window, a period of time, the window that you can't be on the course, you can't play. You just got to schedule around it or
But
play.
it's not like the whole course was shut down. I mean,
No, there's some tournaments that are reverse
there's a
shot.
period of time where it is.
But it comes to, too, I mean, maintenance-wise, getting everything done on a weekly basis, it has to be.
And considering the state amateur part,
Yeah.
which is obviously new,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that
my
way,
recommendation would be I mean, first of all, we don't want to turn that away, but unfortunately, because of, you know, the member guest thing, it's like back-to-back weekends. Now,
Well, it's like-
in the future, you would probably, I would recommend you push not to have that happen.
Yeah.
But in this case, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
Well,
because it would be a
I
recurring
guess what I
event.
don't like about it is, just like you said, Eric, some other courses turned it down, or they would let you know 2 or 3 years ahead of time.
What's that?
Yeah.
On the
State
SCG
tournament.
event? Yeah, usually it's a year in advance, half a year.
I usually see it at least
Yeah.
a year ahead.
Well, in this particular tournament, it probably ain't gonna come around for another 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
And now, I mean, this isn't a reoccurring event. We might not have another SCG event in 2 years
Well,
down the road.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that you became
Well, and I think what you're saying is that as golf has increased, your demand for events has increased as well. And we've entrusted you guys to work those issues out, and it sounds like it's working,
yeah.
you know,
Yep.
so
On air, oh, sorry.
if, you know, if it becomes a problem, or we start seeing it become a problem, then we bring it to you. And so the right buffers are in place, you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing, and if we don't like it, you'll hear about it.
Mhm.
I'd be hesitant to be putting more in, though.
Yes.
And there's,
And I
but
put it in
And
myself
I
personally.
can tell by listening to them, they're,
They are.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if somebody calls you up and says, well, we want to do this, I mean, pretty,
there's,
thinking twice about it, because you got this calendar filled up pretty good.
and there's events that, I mean, every fund, like I told Jason, every fundraiser that comes through is, I mean, you have to treat it like it's the biggest fundraiser, but then there's new ones that want to come in and they want to host their event there, and their fundraiser is probably a great fundraiser. For them, it's good for the course, but then they'll probably go on our City of Mitchell website, look in the calendar events, they'll see that a weekend's open, and I deny them that weekend because we're already too full with events, and it might become an issue down the road with some
You
fundraisers.
know, I
that
use
might-
the excuse, Eric,
Joe Schlimgen
that
said,
my board told me to keep it open.
That's exactly right.
Mhm.
yeah.
That's how you got to approach it, I think, boards.
And if they want to look at board members, give them Jeff.
but Joe's been appointed Sergeant of Arms of all events and committees, so he
Yeah.
will be the clearinghouse.
But I'd just like to reiterate kind of what Brian said. Eric does do an excellent job of, if he can fit somebody on, and not necessarily even when there's a tournament. If tee times are full and somebody shows up, he does everything he can to get them out.
Well, the pressure's going to be on you then, too.
Well, yeah, I'm,
Golf course,
I'm-
and if you want these tournaments.
yeah, I'm well aware of that.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, you guys work and play well together, so that's very beneficial.
That's all, I guess, for the,
Yeah, like
Events.
Eric said, normally we're not at this point, at this time of year, but with that popping up, we just wanted to make everybody aware and where we're heading and everything, so.
Well, I will say this, by looking at your calendar and looking at the plan in the future of how we want to do our golf course, if we start changing things, it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
I mean, and
yep.
I'm looking at October, and you
Yep.
guys are talking, like, if
So-
we can start redoing the greens, or
Yep.
whatever our plan was, it's going to be,
Well, and that's just it. It's going to be a very integral part of it is trying to minimize any closure at all. There will be. There's
This
no
might-
way around it. But if we can minimize it, it'll be the biggest trick, so.
and this probably will be the last year we host a state event if we continue forward with,
Well, they got so many of them, they could come to you again next year with another one.
and we'll probably, if we're depending on where we're at with the plan for the renovation of the course, I mean, you have to have a full course for an event, we might be turning down state events.
How often do you get asked to hold a state high school tournament?
That's on rotation.
All
So, so I think so. I'm not sure how B and A work. B's like to go to a town that has two courses,
Two courses.
so the girls can be at one because the girls and boys are in the same
Well, they
time.
tried that here in Mitchell.
In Mitchell until Wild Oak
Last year,
flooded.
Wild Oak had flooded. or-
Yeah. A's, I don't know. A's, I'm pretty sure their towns are big enough that they have a 18-hole course in their towns, most of them do, that they don't, A's aren't in rotation for, I don't know, bigger cities maybe. And double A just goes in rotation with the 16, 17 schools that are on there. Just like when we host the ESD conference meet, it's 8 schools, they just rotate it through the cities, and when we're on the schedule, I have to bump everything that's on that day away, and that's their day. So,
But see, they can let you know, 3, 4, 5, you know where you're coming.
Yeah, you'll know.
When it's coming.
the SDG events, I don't know how, I mean, Tom's only been there for 2 years, I don't know how his rotation works for SDG events.
Quite often, like he does have a state tournament, but like last year, it was a smaller one. There was only 36 women in it. So we still had to prep for it, and we still had to do whatever we could for it, but we didn't, we only had it closed for a short period of
2 or 3
time.
years ago that we had the senior men's here.
Yeah, we've had it 4 years.
That was 19, wasn't it, my first year?
Yes. We've had the match play, the adult junior and the junior championship. Yeah, it'd been 2019 probably.
And then we had, didn't Myron can
2-man.
win the.
2-man?
Some 2-man tournament?
Yeah, that would have been,
Pre-senior, that was this last fall.
not here.
No.
Well, the one they won was here.
Yeah, that would have been before. That would have been 9, 10, 11 years ago maybe. The
Yeah,
2-man
that
was here.
State 2-man.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyways, if anybody has any questions on that going forward, don't hesitate to stop and talk to myself or Eric. So.
Capital projects?
So there again, we had talked about trees. We're going to try to get them done as much as possible before the golf season starts. There will be some lingering parts of it. With this state amateur, I'm going to try to limit what is in the middle of construction during that. So either we're going to try to get things done early and get it back into play, or wait until after that. So it'll be kind of interesting going on that. Plans are after trees, tee boxes, either leveling or the forward tees. And then after that, just kind of seeing where money is. Talking to a couple contractors, golf course contractors. They're already booking for 2023. So likelihood that we're going to get a contractor in here is fairly slim. But not saying it's not possible. So essentially, we're probably going to end up doing a lot of it ourselves, whatever we do for this year.
Forward tee should be something that we could do ourselves as group of work guys.
Sure.
Well, and I had flags out for where the forward tees were proposed. I know Brian played them. Jeff played them. Did you play them, Joe? You didn't? Okay. I had them out for about a week.
Not long enough.
Well,
Saw Brian drive the water on 16.
maybe they're up too far.
He didn't think so.
So anyways, that was, I just did that, just kind of get some input on them. Well, people like them, don't like them, whatever. So I didn't hear anybody that didn't like the location of them. Brian said that really changed the whole,
It changed
Yeah.
everything for me.
yeah. So
I didn't use,
Forward tee
the only
were-
club I used normally
Formerly
was
known as the ladies' tee.
and
Formerly.
yep, formerly. So
Yeah.
going forward, it's going to be ability based. So it's not necessarily women's. You want to call them the women's, the red women's. We're probably going to look at changing the color concept just to kind of get away from that possibly. So change to different color tees.
Well, I mean, as you did at the end of the season, you put one red one and one gold one.
Yep.
So, I mean, that made everybody happy.
Yeah.
It's when the red ones are behind the gold ones. the lady
So,
in James.
so anyways, yeah, I mean, it's going to be kind of a work in progress. It's trying to go work around tournaments. What I have for labor at the time too. I didn't mention it. We did get a full-time position hired. We did have offered it to one other individual and he backed out. So the one we hired is a local. Kind of excited about it. He doesn't have any true turf experience, but he did go to school for some agriculture. He has some mechanical ability background, so I'm hoping that that all works out and everything. And I think he's willing to learn. I think that's the biggest thing on that.
When does he start?
I haven't decided either the 3rd or the 10th of January. So,
So it doesn't come till next summer?
January, not June, January.
Oh, I thought you said June.
No, no. So that will help too. So
Is the name out? No?
I can tell you later, but
Well,
until it goes through all the
He hasn't completed his background.
Yeah.
I think you should release that till.
yep.
Then best.
Yep. So,
It's Bob Everson. I wasn't supposed to say anything.
I suppose we can use that.
That was an excited utterance back there, wasn't it? Yeah, right. Well, there's opportunities here. Yeah. We can fund this project.
so yeah, I mean, since we're getting in tournaments and just kind of letting you know kind of what I'm thinking. Like I said, it's going to be kind of a work in progress and just kind of going with the flow. Since we're not, more than likely not going to be dealing with the contractors. But leveling tees and the forward tees are going to be the priority for this year with the dollar amount given and the outlook for what we can get done realistically. And if we don't get a lot of that done before, after the state AA, we'll probably go at it a little harder depending on where we're at. So.
Cool.
Anything else?
Not unless there's any questions or concerns or whatever.
Next meeting will be on the 10th, if my calendar is right, of 2022. And we are adjourned.